Today, I'm going to talk about how to deal with high conflict people. So what are high conflict people? High conflict people are people who are difficult and demanding. But what that really means is that their personality isn't flexible. And when someone doesn't have a flexible personality, it's really hard to be around them because they don't make space or room for us, for our perspectives, for our experiences, for our opinions, or for our feelings. And that space is what actually allows us to feel safe in our relationships where we can express ourselves. But high conflict people are really rigid and things have to be their way on their terms. So, how do you know if you're dealing with a high conflict person? The number one way you're going to know is by noticing what happens when you even think about standing up for yourself, speaking your mind, or bringing up any issue. Maybe take a moment to think about doing that right now. It's likely that you'll immediately know that it's a bad idea. You might notice yourself getting tense, your heart rate going up, feeling immediately scared of how they'll react. Or you might notice yourself just not wanting to deal with them at all. Either way, you would just rather not bring it up at all. So today, I'm going to teach you some ways to set boundaries so that you can protect yourself when dealing with these high conflict people. But first, I want to stress that all of us will have to deal with high conflict people in some way at some time, whether it's in our workplace or within our family or in our romantic relationships. So we really have to learn to do one thing really well when we're dealing with these people. And that thing is to learn how to regulate our own nervous system. Because one trait that high conflict people have is that they're usually really reactive. They go from 0 to 60 very quickly, and they might start yelling, sighing, or having some really dark, negative energy. So remember, you never want to match that energy. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to stay grounded and calm in your own emotional energy. So let's say this person comes up to you and they're really upset. They're in a highly activated state. And you can feel yourself getting tense, your heart rate going up. You want to, in that moment, make sure that you're staying calm. And to do so, begin to take some slow, deep breaths. When you're dealing with a high conflict person, it's important to understand one thing first. They tend to project their own emotional state onto other people. Some of you might have heard the term an energy vampire, and all that really means is that someone feeds off of the emotions of other people or of their emotional reactions. So this is why your number one tool is to set separation or clear boundaries between yourself and their emotional experience or their issues. And by staying calm and grounded, you're actually creating a clear energetic line between you and them. That person can be over there in their activated energetic state, while I can be over here in my body in a different energetic state, feeling calm and feeling grounded. Now, the next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to resist the urge to get hooked by their words. High conflict people often have a low frustration tolerance, which means that even minor pushback can feel really threatening to them. So when they say something inflammatory, upsetting, and you immediately get defensive, whether it's by over-explaining yourself, arguing with their version of events because you didn't see it that way, or trying to prove your own point, this only confirms their worst fear, which is that they're not being heard and not being respected. And that's when things can escalate really quickly. So here is something really important to know about high conflict personalities. Most of them experienced a long period of time, often in their childhood, where they felt completely unheard, unseen, unsupported. And because of that, they've actually developed an intense need to be understood, often to an extreme. So this is where we step into empowerment. We can refuse to get pulled into their cycle of emotions. And you'll notice if you let them vent without matching their energy, without getting caught in a cycle of defensiveness, and if you stay calm, something actually begins to shift. The pressure that they carry to be heard at all costs, to be right, it starts to soften. And from that place, you're able to stay more in control of the interaction, not allowing their chaos or their mood to take control of you. Now, the third thing that we want to keep in mind when dealing with a high conflict person is we want to avoid the urge to take sides. High conflict people are usually in conflict with someone or with something. And a lot of the times they'll come to you and they'll try to sell you on why someone or something that they experience is wrong. Now, your job in these moments is to stay neutral. You can listen to them, but resist the urge to take sides. Don't fuel the conflict. Don't add your opinion to their opinion. Simply don't get pulled in. Now, this is one of the most important boundaries to hold, because what it signals to a high conflict person is that you're not available to be pulled into their drama. And trust me, they can pull you in really sneaky ways sometimes. You might not even realize that it's happening, and you're already in the middle of it. So stay aware and make sure you're just listening. You're not taking the bait. A great way to practice staying neutral is by asking questions instead of agreeing with their story. So if they're venting, say, about how terrible someone is, instead of validating that directly, yeah, they're wrong, they're bad, you can say something like, well, how did that make you feel? This lets them continue to feel heard without pulling you into their conflict. The fourth thing to keep in mind when dealing with high conflict people is we want to witness and break any codependency habits that we might have. If you're codependent, that means that when someone else is having a problem or is emotionally activated, you might instantly notice yourself wanting to fix it or immediately becoming overwhelmed by their emotion. High conflict people are often drawn to codependent people because those people have weaker boundaries. So they're more likely to get emotionally involved. Now, I'm speaking from my own experience. Coming from a codependent family, I know how quickly one-person issues can turn into a family-wide emotional storm. One person feels something and suddenly everyone else is involved. Now, if that feels familiar to you, it is so important to recognize it. If you're someone who immediately jumps in to fix-it mode, or if you struggle to say no without feeling a massive trauma response, so much guilt you can't even say no, then these high conflict dynamics may simply be too much for you. You might find yourself unable to resist that urge and always feeling like you need to show up to solve someone else's problems. So it is important to acknowledge that habit and that pattern within yourself, and it can be incredibly healing to begin to say to other people in those moments, you know what? I just simply can't be around this energy right now. I just simply can't help you with your issue right now. I just simply don't have the resources myself. And some of you might benefit by limiting your time or your communication with that person. Those are healthy boundaries, and they allow us to take care of ourselves. Now, the final thing that we want to keep in mind when dealing with a high conflict person is this phrase. And we want to practice this phrase until it's second nature. And this phrase is, I trust you know how to deal with this. This sentence, simple, can be a game changer. So many of us, especially if we're codependent, take on too much responsibility for other people's problems, for their emotions. Someone feels something so intense and we feel it and we absorb it like it's our job. But that's not healthy for us. We're not here to carry other people's emotional loads. The only person that we're responsible for is ourselves. And, of course, our children if we have them. So here's how to use this sentence in practice. Let's say you have a high conflict coworker. They come up to you really upset about something that happened in the office. They're ranting about how someone didn't finish a project, how stressed they are, and all of the ways that they've been wronged. You stay calm and validating by saying something maybe like, wow, that sounds really stressful. Then you add, and I trust you know how to deal with this. That one sentence can shift everything. It hands the responsibility right back to them in a kind way. Your old instinct might, of course, be to ask, well, have they talked to this person? To offer solutions, to try and soothe them. So you want to notice that instinct, and instead of acting on that, instead use that line. I trust you know how to deal with this. Use the line and then pause and let it land. Because what high conflict people are often looking for is emotional bait. You to get wrapped up in their emotion right with them. And when you don't take that bait and instead reflect back their capability, it breaks the cycle between the two of you. I'd love to hear your experience with high conflict people below in the comments, or if there's any of these tips that you have found helpful in changing these dynamics.